Hey, what's up, Kenny? How's it going, Jared Bunch? What are you guys doing? Laxus can eat Kirin? No, he can't. Laxus is absolutely not going to dominate against Kirin. Kirin should, in fact, be stronger just by logic of where Kirin is, literally being equal to Suzaku. And Urza, who gave Laxus a really hard fight, though Laxus was clearly the more powerful, doesn't change the fact that Suzaku ran through Urza pretty easily. What's up? I hate power. Peter Campbell, how's it going? Laxus monster. So one thing I'm gonna mention in my review when we get like the fan translations is the fact that Celine counts Scoleon, Madmol, Natsu, and Lucy as out. She said it's 5v5 now, but I was assuming she was gonna teleport people out when they lost. So it just seems more of like a status one where it's like maybe if Gray freezes somebody, they're down one, but then they thaw out and they're able to fight again. The number goes up, kind of like how it was in the Fighting Festival. How when Mystigan showed up, the numbers went up, or when the girls got unpetrified, the numbers went up, kind of thing. It was a completely different kind of setup, but obviously Celine, logically, if it was done in a way like I said, where it was like a single elimination, you're done kind of thing, Celine would teleport them out. Or it wouldn't instantly be Natsu and Lucy. It'd be really weird to take Natsu and Lucy out immediately and then they're not included for the rest of the arc. I don't think that's going to be the case. So I do think it's really interesting that it's going to, at least seemingly, have characters have the capability of getting up. I think that'll be really cool in the ruling. Because obviously one of the things about Dragon Slayers is they're very durable and they can come back from a lot. And I'm hoping Scoleon gets back up. Because logically, yes, Scoleon losing to Laxus made sense. As much as I think Scoleon's a lot stronger than... And then Scoleon... I'm fumbling on my words real bad. Scoleon over Kirin Madmol. And... that's, there's a big gap, obviously, because Kirin got low diff by Laxus, so Scoleon is in between that gap, but obviously Scoleon wasn't going to beat Laxus, so Laxus being able to defeat him, then obviously Laxus with Lightning can do internal damage, so beating Madmol wasn't that hard for him, because Madmol's whole thing is he's a brick wall tank. If you can damage him from the inside, you can't hurt him. He was able to obviously get back up from Natsu's Purgatory. He was only in base, but Laxus, obviously, in base is much stronger than Natsu in base. Let's see what else is going on. It's been a long time since came on your streams. Well, how you been, Phil Jones? What's been going on with you? Also, with Naruto Kirin. Who's Kirin from Naruto? I know Karen or whatever her name is. Dear people are complaining on Infinite not having a battle royale. Well, what's Infinite? You talking about Halo? What is this? I instantly thought about Halo Infinite, but I don't really know what you mean. Already about to do a drive-by in Fortnite. Oh, that look was kind of goofy, just seeing like people go around and shooting shit dressed up as Naruto. I thought that was pretty funny. Now we all know Gray's below Laxus. I think right now I would definitely put that as the more clear-cut answer, but I do think Gray has the clear potential to overtake Laxus at some point. I think Gray could be stronger than him by the end of 100 Years Quest, but if I had to just kind of go based off of right now, I would obviously definitely give it to Laxus, because Laxus is stronger than Urza, and Gray and Urza, even though they were in Ellen tier and they got stronger while they were there, but they both beat a Moonlight Beauty God. They beat somebody of that level. They beat somebody at about the same kind of area. Urza beat Yoko a lot easier than obviously Gray beat Hakune, but Hakune has definitely had a more dangerous ability than Yoko, and Yoko was against pretty much the whole main cast until it became 1v1 of her versus Urza. But obviously Urza had help for the first chunk of how Yoko's powers work, so she definitely had that advantage. Though I feel like Urza, as long as she, was able to stay out of that smoke tree and she has enough time to learn and figure stuff out, because the hard thing for them was it the cloth one and the smoke one just kind of like set Urza up and then strangled her and put her down. But now I think Urza would be fine because, you know, it's just a couple kind of like one-trick moves that you can get around if you just see ones. Urza's top 3 toughest fights. That's probably like Azuma, Irene, and I kind of want to say Ikaruga. Like, Ikaruga was a really good one for Urza because, like, Urza versus Evergreen wasn't really much of a fight. Urza's fight with Midnight really wasn't that much of a fight. Nightwalker could be a candidate. But I feel like with Ikaruga, it was definitely one of those times where Urza had to really overcome her opponent. Because with Nightwalker, the thing was they were equal. Whereas with Ikaruga was definitely stronger than Urza at that point in the fight. Because Urza was playing more defensively instead of offensively. But I definitely would put Ikaruga on there. Laxus is definitely, I think Laxus is a little different. Because that fight was way more of like a kind of non-aggressive, like it was an aggressive fight, but more of like a non-lifeline kind of thing, where it's like it could get really bad if she loses. Because I didn't think even with control of the Fairy Tail Guild, I don't think that Laxus would, under Ferris's control, would have killed Urza. It just would have been, man, now Urza's under control of Ferris kind of thing. Whereas the other places, like, that was a life and death kind of situation. But Laxus is definitely up there, too. I've always liked the Ikaruga fight, too. I thought it was really cool. It just kind of came down to one of those, like, one hit, one kind of end moments. It's always made me sad knowing that Mishima killed her off. But let me get some more in the comments. What's up, Joe XZ? How's it going? Bud, how are you doing today? Kirin, a lightning-based jutsu? Oh, the jutsu? Yeah, I know what that is. I thought you were meant, like, as a character. Yeah, Halo Infinite. What's going on with Halo Infinite? Anyone believe Yami's not here? I do. I think Yami's pretty much in a bad spot. Gray can get a power up any chapter. No, I hope Gray gets stronger, because like Gray has gotten a lot for his character in 100 Years Quest. He's obviously gotten a lot of stuff with Juvia and character development from his relationship with her, and then obviously like his own personal kind of relationship, like stuff in his own head. And then he's gotten advancement in the way his magic works. Obviously, like, he imbued like large scale dynamic ice make with devil slaying ice. He pretty much did like a move that advanced basically everything about his ice make. And obviously then he gained like resistances to like power negation through ice. He gained a lot, but in terms of when it comes to like a power level upgrade feat, the most she can really go is like beating Hakune, and where Hakune's kind of at with like Yoko and Mimi and stuff, and obviously Urza being contender for people at that level of difficulty. Like, Ray hasn't otherwise gotten anything power level wise. Like, Ray hasn't gotten some giant large scale attack or fought a character that is otherwise like a, you know, proven at a massive tier above him. Like, obviously, the tier gap between, like, the Black Dragon Slayer Knights and a majority of the Spriggan is really big. I would only consider, like, Irene and Larcade at points where they could mess around with the Black Dragon Slayer Knights. Just looking at, like, Suzaku, Natsu, Irene, August, all of their endgame moves are so powerful, and none of the other kind of, like, big characters there, like, in Spriggan tier can really compete with that. So once we get to Gray, I don't know. I really want Gray to get something new, like in terms of his base power. I want to get like a progressed devil form for Gray. I've been saying this for a long time. It's one of the things that's been on my list since the start of 100 Years Quest, because the difference between devil slaying and god slaying, the two obviously Slayer editions since the start of the series. We had Dragon Slayer in Chapter 1, and then we got God Slayer, then we got Devil Slayer. But one of the things that Devil Slaying has is that it actually has a equivalent of Dragon Force, where Gray becomes part demon. His body becomes part of his Slayer, of Devil Slaying magic. Devil and demon pretty much go one or the other with Devil Slaying magic. It does, like, in the way that it's translated in the manga, they do say in the Japanese anime Devil Slayer pretty much every time, but they do say demon in other parts of the word, so it's pretty much the same thing. For the magic itself, but Gray actually has a form that could progress the same way that Natsu has with Dragon Force, and any Dragon Slayer has with Dragon Force. We didn't get any of that for the God Slayers. So Gray could easily get a more powerful form, fight. Maybe he'll get it in this arc. Maybe he'll get something against one of the Dragon Eaters. I don't really know who it would be. I kind of want Laxus to lose, and this is one of the things that I mentioned. I would really like it if Laxus loses to Kirin and ends up ends up maybe fighting Gray. And this is the reason that I want it. One, we already have an understanding where Laxus is power level wise from his fight with Urza. It doesn't have to be a stomp. It could just be like a really close match. It could literally be how Urza and Laxus went reversed, where Laxus just barely loses to Kirin. And then Gray, Kirin gets back to full strength. Maybe Laxus is still unconscious, comes back later after a fight with Kirin and Gray. And this, I'll go into depth more on this and give kind of like pinpoints of why I kind of have my spots and all this. But if Gray ends up fighting Kirin, maybe Kirin gets back to full power and then Gray fights him. And it's instead of a fight where, say, Laxus and Kirin, it's like it can go either way. It could be obviously in Kirin's favor against Gray, but Gray has to, for whatever the context of the fight is and the circumstances, he pretty much has to become more of his devil side of his magic. And it makes sense because we saw him flex just his devil side in Drasil when during the point where he fought the Thunder Legion, when he fought Freed Bixlow and Evergreen. He just used the devil side and its physical strength. And he was a bit more vicious during that fight too. So I could see Gray trying to advance that here in a fight where maybe his ice is as effective. Because the thing about Dragon Force and Devil Force by proxy is the fundamental difference of it versus a standard power-up. It advances your Slayer magic at a core level. It advances the basis of your magic, of slowly becoming the creature that the magic is imitating through the magic itself. Dragon Slayers become dragons. As we saw with Gray, he was slowly becoming a devil without having control over his magic. So an advancement at your core level advances your magic drastically because it advances it across the board. That's why Dragon Force, anytime Dragon Force happens and you see a clear, drastic, temporary advancement in their dragon form, getting dragon scales, or in Winnie's case, feathers and stuff, getting stuff in their, in the transformation and eventual evolution into a dragon, they drastically improve. Even when Natsu got just scales in the Tower of Heaven, just base kind of scales, no coloration or anything kind of special about him, just on pretty much his face and his forearms, his physical strength and his destructive capability skyrocketed. That's why Gray could easily become way more powerful if he's ever given an advancement in his devil slaying form. If his, Devil Force or whatever it's eventually called, I assume it's literally just Devil Force right now as the temporary name. Maybe it'll have something different. Maybe he'll name it. He could be the first. Who knows? We've really only seen one Devil Slayer, technically, since it's both an Ice Devil Slayer, Silver and Gray, but Gray's the only one that's ever shown a devil form. But it's obviously just a more advanced spot where Silver was. So it's just a high possibility. It's not a high possibility. It's a high theory based off of some possibilities there. Because again, and the kind of conclusion where I was going is, I do think that Gray should be stronger than Urza in this arc. Because Gray is, though he's not as emphasized as people like or Sasuke or Bakugo or whatever, Gray is Natsu's rival. Gray is Natsu's primary rival. That's why Mishima has stuff set up like both of their dads in Tartarus, obviously, fire into ice. But the difference is the devil and the dragon, and obviously with Natsu, the Indian stuff, Gray is designed to fight him. Mishima literally gave Gray a magic that lets him potentially fight Berserk Natsu. Whenever Natsu goes into his Aetherius kind of state and has that setup, he should be able to fight him. Because the difference between also Dragon Slaying and Devil Slaying is Dragon Slaying lets you damage dragons, whereas Devil Slaying lets you counteract their abilities and gives you a damage boost against them. Whereas like God Slaying lets you touch gods. It lets you affect their magic and touch them. Because otherwise mortals can't touch the gods, as we saw with Kronos. So I really hope Gray can do it, because if Gray can overcome Kirin, because obviously Urza is, though stronger now, one, we don't know how much stronger Laxus is, and Laxus could easily become stronger, because one thing also about Laxus and Gajeel is both of them don't have true Dragon Force, and that's the big Dragon Force multiplier. That's the good one. Obviously not the same as like Laxus having the like janky Lacrima based one that he had in the Fighting Festival, or that Sting and Rogue had in the Grand Magic Games. He could get actual Dragon Force and become, tremendously more powerful. But that's going to really depend. But if Gray is able to overcome somebody who is above both Laxus and Urza, then obviously that would put him at the same pedestal around people like where Natsu should be at. Because I do think Dragon Force Natsu could beat them. Natsu's problem with Suzaku was he went in base form. If he actually went into the fight with Suzaku, and even in Fire Dragon King mode, I think he would have done much better. Because the way that I kind of see it is Selene and Alderaan obviously equal. The Dragon Gods are equal. So the weakened Alderaan when oh no, I guess Wolfen kind of just left because he didn't want to end up getting Xerath up again. But Gears, Metro, and Doom, when they went down, Alderaan was temporarily weakened, and we know Selene's human form is much weaker than her dragon form. So I would assume that these two weakened versions are around each other, because I think it makes sense, because it took Natsu's Dragon Force with his strongest technique to beat the weakened Alderaan, and it took Suzaku at his strongest to beat the weakened the weakened Selene. I know the Dragon Eaters should have Dragon Force, but we know they can't just use theirs at any point. It's kind of like how Seven Deadly Sins, like the Endura, like once you use that, there doesn't seem to be a regular way to come back. We only saw it at one point, but I can't remember the exact circumstances. I know like Elizabeth did something, but obviously it's supposed to be a potential no way coming back, because we don't know if they gain their sanity once they become dragons. Because we know through, say, Acnologia, Irene, Eleftheria, once you become a dragon, you can change your form and come back and kind of like shift between them. You are still a dragon in reality, but you can shapeshift into a human form. But I don't really know if they would regain their intelligence, because we saw with Nibiru that he was just kind of like losing his mind. Granted, he's not the most intelligent from the start, but I would assume that tied to obviously the far accelerated process of becoming a dragon, and obviously it trades your mind up for it, it just makes a lot of sense that that's just the functionality of it and why it would be forbidden in their guild. But I don't know. It's going to really depend on a lot, because, again, that makes a lot of sense. Again, if Natsu's strongest attack and Suzaku's strongest attack beat the same level of character, because then obviously it would put Natsu at the level of them, and then it would just take other people kind of like around that level, because Natsu Dragon Force should be the strongest in the guild, and I think that's a fact. Laxus in base is stronger than Natsu in base, but I do think the second Natsu would activate Dragon Force, the fight against Laxus would be over. Unless Laxus could not get hit by Natsu until his magic runs out, I don't really see Natsu losing that fight. Let me get some of these content. I know I just ranted for a bit, but I had some stuff I really wanted to go over. Your dual wielding streams. Whose other stream are you watching? So do you think it would be Major Death or Arc in Black Clover? I think it's going to be Yami. I 100% think it's going to be Yami. Very close to finishing my novel first, so good luck. I hope it comes out fully well. Amelia, I don't think they will kill him. I think they're going to kill him. I think they do. If Greg gets a Demon Force, that's exactly one thing I was going over. I really want Gray to get an advancement in his Devil Slain form. Imagine Devils ends up being like Avatar at the end. I hope not. I don't really want them to get run over. Or which one do you mean? Because I would really like the Black Dragon Slayer Knights to be good. I really like Suzaku. Suzaku is like Selene is definitely one of my favorite characters in it, like introduced in the whole series. I really like Selene's character. She's been very fun, and I like how she ties into the lore, and she's got her own stuff going and whatnot. But Suzaku definitely is the best in terms of character that Mishima has introduced. Like his design, he's already got like a really interesting character arc. His personality, the way he fights, like he's a really cool character, and I like anybody at his level should be extremely powerful, especially when Mishima had him beat human form Selene. He's clearly extremely powerful. So all of the Black Dragon Slayer Knights need to live up to that position they're at. If one of them runs into Ignia or Viernes and gets one shot, I can't really get mad at that because that's logically how that encounter could go if said dragon god decides to kill them, as we saw with Selene and Georg, or say Acnologia and God Sarita. Times like that where it's just like, that just makes sense. Because I mentioned a lot of times, I do think what makes sense is more important than fan wants and needs. Because the way that logically you set up a story is there are things running in motion, and if a certain event kind of has to occur in a scenario like that, where you have Acnologia furious that there's a, well, not furious, but on his warpath for dragon slayers in a blood hunger, and he runs across one that he just decides he feels like killing, who's an ant to him, or in case Selene and Georg, makes sense that they can just kill them with little to no effort. And, thank you very much for the super chat, Kinmano. How would Fairy Tail handle someone who is anti-authoritarian to the extreme, and a person who's pretty much is petty about being told what to do? I mean, that'd be fine in the guild. That's not something bad, like, for them. If somebody just doesn't want to listen to rules, like, there's a point where Laxus goes over kind of the criteria for where your position in the guild gets a little shaky, is with when Ferris had the encounter with Jalal. And, well, I guess it was kind of Toka sorta in control, but obviously, you know, the White Witch, Ferris, Toka, that whole bit with Jalal confronting her. But if their backs, like, they're not gonna ask you questions about your backstory if you don't want to say anything. But if whatever you have tied to you, if it brings danger to the guild, that's the problem itself. That's when something becomes a problem, when something that you have kind of attached to you is a danger, and you're just kind of hiding it. There are kind of variations, like, obviously, I can't really say stuff like Mystigan or like Natsu, but, you know, like, the extent of, obviously, if Ferris was a bad person, or Ferris was leading something really dangerous and was a threat to the guild itself. That's kind of where the line would be drawn. If somebody just doesn't really like listening to rules or very anti-authoritarian, I think they'd be completely fine. Like, I think the only thing that would really become, like, a problem is, like, if the council came around, they would kind of be like, get in the back room, get out of here. We're not going to tell you to change your mind, but don't talk to him, get out of here. That's pretty much how I could only really see something like that really becoming, like, any problem points in their guild. Could see Selene beat Fairyheart Zareth. I don't know. I don't think so. Because, like, the thing is, like, the question would be if Zareth could affect them with magic. I don't think so, potentially, because it really depends on, like, Acnologia, like, they're hyped to be around Acnologia's level. We don't know their, like, the exact one-for-one of that. It seems to all just be vague around Acnologia, but we know where Acnologia actually sits as the strongest. And if, say, they are close, because we know that Fairyheart Zareth did not think he could even fight Acnologia, and this was confirmed by the fact Acnologia ate the space between time. He knew that nothing he could do magically, even at that point, could work on Acnologia. So he just decided to go, like, reset time and kill Acnologia before he ended up becoming powerful. And because of that, if Selene and the other dragon gods have a dragon, like, immunity to magic level around Acnologia, then there's nothing he could really do to them. Though he would be all-powerful, it would be a power that they are just really immune to. They couldn't do anything really to him, but I don't really see the possibilities in that fight. It would just kind of stalemate. The only one right now I could see is Ignia, potentially, if his fire can burn concepts like Natsu Savage Dragon Fire, which I think potentially it could, because I think that's more of a fire dragon thing. Because there's obviously that point where that point when Simon mentions, obviously, when Natsu realizes his true power, like, evil's pretty much just gonna be gone. And I think that might have been just kind of like something that Machine Man has been kind of running off with that. And obviously, like, him just, his fire getting more powerful, and just destroying things to a higher plane. At this point, like, the time itself just gets really ridiculous when you look at, like, how it's been climbing. And then you see, like, what E&D was capable of. And now, like, one thing that is really overlooked about that, too, about Natsu Savage Dragonfire, is it affects things internally as well. It burnt Fairyheart out of Zareth. And we don't know the exactness of what's going on with Mersophobia, but it seems tied to it because the only other time Natsu's fire has ever burnt his arms was, one, the point where he beat Fairyheart Zeref, and two, when he was in that form to beat Mersophobia. And both times his fire burnt his arms, and both times he infected people, like somebody's internal magic. Like Mersophobia says that he doesn't have any magic at that point, which is still a really weird thing because he's still a dragon. So I don't know why he's stuck in human form. That's one of the things I think that's iffy, unless like Natsu's fire is even more broken than we could possibly imagine. Like it could get like Mishima could do something ridiculous, because the thing about Mishima is he does get ridiculous when it comes to endgame stuff. Like he could literally make E and D's power something about ending, like it led to Zeref's death, and it led to Mersphobia's the end of Mersphobia's like crazy like dangerous life. Like if it's something more on the idea of the end as a concept. There's obviously that's just kind of like growing off of like how could it get crazier, but I'm still trying to figure out what Mishima's plan is with that whole thing with Mersobi, because I don't think that just happened, that he somehow just doesn't have any powers, but somehow Zeref... Well, no, Zeref got his powers burnt down, but Mersobia, encountering the same fire, had something going around with his internal powers. So I think that Mishima is building off of something with that. It'll really just depend. There's a whole lot of stuff I think he did near the end of Alvarez that is playing a part in 100 Years Quest. Like, I think the whole point when Lucy's messing with the book and, like, Natsu's fire is going into her arms from his book, like, just that internal heat. And Zeref talks about how no human should survive messing with that book, like, messing with the demonic script. And the only reason, obviously, she did because Grey was there. Grey was able to fend off against the demonic heat. And the logical thing about Natsu being only alive because of living magic was something that really kind of clicked this theory, because it meant that with Zeref dying, all of his Aetherius die, and that would have meant Natsu died. And we already knew that in the story, but he's not. And I think that the connection of that living magic point, as we saw with something like with Crawford switching organic links and stuff to other people, I think that link could get moved, and did get moved, to Lucy, and it explains why Natsu stopped against Mersobi when Lucy like hugged him from behind and was trying to hold him back. And it just all makes sense to me, at least. Anyway, Wendy having some kind of cures attribute. Wendy, that cut. What are you talking about? What do you think of recent My Hero chapter? I'm kind of upset. I like Stars and Stripes, and the thing is, like, her death isn't that sad to me because we didn't really have her at all. Like, the only way we could have really been attached to her is just how powerful she was and how OP her ability was. But we had no time to really get to know her. We had no time to, like, really get the depth between, like, her and her crew and see why they were so close, why she cared about him so much. We didn't get to see that, so it just doesn't really... It doesn't really make me sad. It just makes me kind of upset that character's gone. Because, like, she could have been a really good character. Like, she could have been so cool if she met Deku, and this was, like, who trained peak Deku. Like, Deku fights somebody this OP in order to get him ready for Shigaraki. Like, have something like another small time skip, but, like, actually, like, a couple years and get Shigaraki and Deku up to their prime. I don't know, there's so much he could have done, because I think this fight could have gone this way, but if there was a bunch of build-up to it, and say this fight put Shigaraki out for a longer period of time, she sacrificed herself to give Deku more time, and that's how this all played out instead, I think that would have been way cooler. I'm just kind of upset, because I actually really liked her character, and I really liked the ability. Like, she just was really interesting, and I liked how she died, but there was no real emotional connection and weight behind it. It just kind of happened. She didn't even know any of the main cast. So none of the main cast really can be that sad she's dead, other than, like, if they were a fan of hers. And that's what bothers me. And she could have been kind of like what Night Eye was, but at a high power level endgame kind of level, where she is also an All Might Admirer, but her and Deku are pretty much the last bastions to fight this worldly threat before, like, you know, to stop him, or else, you know, all the heroes and the good guys all lose. But she ends up just kind of like living in a volume and then ending in a volume, and it's a little upsetting. It's kind of like how he introduced Lady Nagant and then immediately kind of got rid of her. I'm not a huge fan of Horikoshi does that. It does feel kind of episodic, like it's just kind of like a sequence of events, but it's not something that made to actually have any like larger weight. Kind of like not filler episodes, but kind of like how the way that like the filler ones just kind of like supposed to fill up some time. And I'm just not a fan of that because it was just kind of a flex off between Stars and Stripes and Shigaraki. And now Shigaraki's nerfed, so it's like she just pretty much was introduced to fight him, nerf him, and die. And I'm just not a fan. I don't really like that in the story. Like, the only way I can really see it going positively is if Stars and Stripes is instead designed to become more of a disaster kind of thing. Like if Shigaraki comes out of this like more powerful, but he also is he's like low on quirks, so he just goes on a rampage trying to collect them, and say somehow New Order gets to Deku and Deku can have that. Like, there was so much possibility in this scene. I really wish that Horikoshi did more with it. This is something I could have really seen dragged out. Because clearly Stars and Stripes was a character that had a lot of emotional stuff like tied to her, and like he planned out a very sad death for her, but obviously that wasn't enough. Like, there wasn't enough kind of time with her to really kind of get the full extent power of that sad death. But I don't know. I really wish he extended more of that. I've been really kind of bummed out about that. Like, I know people are like sad about Morris, but the thing about Morris is clearly like Tabata either has something else planned for Morris, or Morris was just supposed to accelerate the second gate. And though Morris is cool, I don't like there's a gap between where I think the large scale story someone like Stars and Stripes could have done, like a potential like end game mentor and partner maybe for Deku, and then ends up dying to kind of like get upset for endgame, would have been really cool. But it is what it is. One of the new accents is Galactica is Acnoel. It's called the Mother of Space Dragon. Surprisingly, we're getting some fourth counterpart to Acnologia. I think it's more gonna be like, because look at the design of like her panel. Is that she has like these gear shoulders and it's the mechanical dragon in the back. My guess is she's like an inventor and she's invented all of the mechanical dragons out in the cosmos, and that's where the idea of like the Mother of Dragons comes from. I really want her to be an inventor. I don't want her to be dragon based. I want her to essentially kind of like think of the idea of some old ancient kind of character that like is connected to dragons that makes like mythical objects and weapons and stuff, but instead of magic and stuff, you change it from like to machines. So she's like this mythical, almost fantasy meets machine design of technology. I think that would be really cool. Like, there's a lot of potential, I think, for that character, because the fact, like, it's definitely something that seems like Mishima would give a lot of attention to. I absolutely think that's a character that Mishima would give a lot of just general lore to. You know, the other two could be obviously very big because they're all supposed to be important characters, but I don't see that out of the three of them, which one would hold potentially more story lore and like large scale than the one that's the Mother of Dragons. And Mishima just specifically puts one of those mechanical dragons that were from specifically he put like the one from chapter 1 too. So that just says a lot as well as to what Mishima has, in mind, at least for this character. There's a lot of stuff that Mishima does that you can tell the potential in his kind of like his own liking, design, and investment into characters are. And like Suzaku was one of them. I did a video kind of like talking a little bit about that. And I think somebody like this Acnoel character is maybe something that could go along with that. Maybe like mixing the ideas behind Acnologia and Irene, but making it into some form of dragon like machinist or something. It could be really cool. What's your thoughts on the latest Yozakura? I'm wondering if all the Yozakura heads then are alive and somewhere out there in the world. There's definitely some weird stuff going on with that. I didn't see that plot twist coming, and I want to see where what exactly the plan is. Because now I guess, will it be that they're going to go seek out everybody else in the world and find out information and lore and maybe fight bad, enemies along the way and see what's going to go on with that? I'm worried that like we're already pretty far in the series because we're only at what, like 100 something, and the series is already, I don't think it's endgame, but it feels to me almost like the second to last arc with like Momo as like the enemy, and the only person at least right now potentially I see as like a villain further than them is Tsubomi. Other than that, I don't really see how far the series can go, and that's what worries me a little bit because I do enjoy the series, and I don't want it to end as early as what, like a year or two. So, this one. Why does Kiria, the Blade Dragon, exist? Suzaku's sword stays redundant. No, so he's just a better version. He's a stronger version of her style. But the problem is we haven't seen anything that crazy from Kiria, and I think that's kind of the problem. We like say Kiria is less powerful, but her Dragon Slaying has like a different perk to it. Because what she did with Urza, I think that the hypnosis, the fact that it doesn't have a technique named Dragon Slaying something something, makes me think that like it's a separate technique. It could be part of like her Dragon Slaying perk very easily, but we don't really ever get any confirmation to. I think the easiest way is to assume that, but say that is her perk. That's just the thing that obviously separates her from Suzaku. Is Suzaku's actually like got a sword. He's got like a whole style. He's way more powerful, but maybe she is just set into like a different style of how her swords and her Dragon Slaying magic really kind of benefits and gets the best of whatever it can do. Maybe we'll see that more. We haven't had like a really serious Kiria fight. I think that's part of the problem, kind to really kind of gauge her style with Suzaku. Because the first time we see her, she obviously is stronger than the start of 100 Years Quest Lucy, like back in Elmina. But with Urza, she hypnotizes Urza very early in the fight, and then Urza's fight with her on their boat is pretty short, and it's not given a winner. Though we know that from Urza's fight with Laxus, Urza was stronger, but we didn't get to see that much of Kiria's magic. Kiria is very easily beaten by Laxus, and I'm wondering if that's what Mishima's plan is now, because he had Scoleon and Madmol defeated first. Again, I'm hoping so bad. I'm hoping so bad Scoleon gets back up. I really want to see Scoleon do something. But Kiria is with Misaki, so clearly Mishima is, I guess, maybe planning for Kiria to get something at some point. Maybe it's going to be, maybe it will be with someone like, maybe Gajil and Wendy will group up and they'll fight Misaki and Kiria. I think that'd be a pretty good fight. I don't really know, like, the weird thing is, like, the fight everybody associates Wendy with is Haku, because they're both really young. And the fight that Gajil, I think, was the easiest kind of associate with was with Madmol, because they're both armor, very defensive-based characters. And it would be obviously a big upgrade to Gajil as a character if he's able to have a defensive feat above Madmol. That would be huge for him, because it would just put him at what he's good at a much higher tier. Even if it doesn't make him overall more powerful, it definitely adds on to what he can do. And definitely when we saw him fight Natsu and Drusilla, when he was like using Natsu's punches to pretty much absorb them to attack and like a counter attack, to make his attack pretty much make his other move more powerful. That was just really smart on his part. But it's really going to depend on what Mishima does with them getting back up, because if Scoleon and Madmol, so not Scoleon, if Scoleon and Madmol don't get back up, because there's no way that Natsu and Lucy are out. There's no way Natsu and Lucy are out. They're gonna get, they're gonna get fixed at some point. We just gotta, that whole thing is set up to be, funny, and then obviously demonstrate Haku's abilities. I don't really know what his plan is with Haku, but Natsu and Lucy will come back, and their numbers will kind of raise up. And then with the Dragoners, I'm hoping Suzaku and Scoleon, or not Suzaku, Scoleon and Madmol get back up, and their numbers go back up, and I can actually see Scoleon in a good fight. Because obviously as Dragon Slayers, they can recover and get back on their feet. And in a Labyrinth, I feel like with where a lot of people have died, I guess technically Madmol, because we could have somebody who died wearing armor. But Scoleon eat some bones and get his power back, and then end up fighting like Gray or something. It's really going to depend on what he has kind of planned and what's going to get kind of set up. Like, the matches are all going to be really weird. Like, Kirin and Laxus was one that I think a lot of people could have seen. I was kind of hoping he would be a fight for Gajil, because we could just have this kind of, like, darker character fight, obviously, like Gajil, and some, like, kind of cool metal match. Like, he he's fought a lot of really kind of like cool metal scenes. Like he's his Iron Shadow Dragon. He had his fight with Torafusa in a giant dome of poisonous water while people are dying from poison, and he's on a clock timer before everybody dies. His fight with Bloodmen. He has had a lot of like spooky enemies, and I get Panther Lily is definitely not a spooky enemy, but it's funny because it's like he had a consecutive set, but it's like some of his enemies before that, like Kawazu and Yamazu, they're absolutely not spooky. Like they're definitely a nasty tag team, but definitely not like in terms of fear-inducing. They're not scary. Is only me or is Lax versus Celine foreshadowing? No, there's no way that like Laxus will get no diffed by Celine if she's serious. I think Laxus, if he unlocked Dragon Force, could defeat human form Celine, but I do not see Laxus defeating Celine. I think if Mishima is going to do anything with Celine and a character outside of Natsu and Suzaku, she's probably going to do something with Urza and Jalal, because I do think that the fact Mishima, right before we went into Edelus, had Urza and Jalal like embrace each other under the moonlight, I think that was just a little nod out, like an Easter egg at what he was planning to do. And then he had that bit when Urza was threatening Celine, and Celine kind of got that serious look in her eye. I think Celine knows about Urza and knows about who Urza's mother is, and doesn't like has a personal beef with her. Because as we saw with Celine and Suzaku, she found out that he ate Kuriduki, and she didn't even like freak out initially. She still kind of held her composure. She was getting more aggressive, and then she ended up revealing it. But when she said it out loud, she had that psycho dead eye kind of expression. And I'm guessing that that's how it will be for Urza once we eventually see Urza and Irene come into play potentially with Celine. Laxus beat Kirin. I really want Georg to come out of that coffin, but with Kirin, I don't want Laxus to beat Kirin. I really don't. I want Laxus to lose. I'm hoping it's kind of like how Laxus versus Urza really kicked off that section of Drasil. Like Drasil's first chunk is, obviously them going there, finding out about the setup, finding out about the guild and Ferris and stuff. And then you have some of like the smaller fights. You have like the fights with like Mira Jane Elfman. You have Gray versus the Thunder Legion, Natsu versus Wraith. But then you get to like Urza versus Laxus. You get to Nibaru and Wendy, and then you start moving into like the Godseed fights, and then ultimately with Natsu and Alderaan. And I'm hoping that's how it's going to be with this arc, and we could get it with Laxus defeated. Because one of the things about Tartaros that was really cool is Laxus, who, though Guild Arts was obviously still stronger, he wasn't around. So Laxus realistically was the strongest person the Fairy Tail Guild had, and taken out at the start of the arc. But not done in a way of like an actual formidable like power-wise opponent. Margear obviously couldn't have done it, but it was done by Tempesta, and he ended up doing it in a just kind of like a trickery kind of way of like how his hacks works instead of like an actual straight fight. So with Kirin, he can have that, and we already had a big fight with Laxus where he won, whereas Laxus could have a really big fight where it's close but he could lose, and I think it would still give a very clean and strong W for his character in both a showing of his strength, because this would be a big upgrade for Laxus. Think about it like this. With Urza, we've always known that Laxus was stronger than Urza. That's been apparent since the start of the series. And Laxus versus Urza actually fighting really cemented that, because Urza had better feats at the point of the end of Alvarez, but that was Laxus, obviously, during his fight with Wall, when he was still hindered by Devil Slayer particles, with the literally anti-magic in his body that was weakening him and making it harder for him to even do anything. So when he got that out of his body, he automatically got, he was freed from pretty much this heavy burden on his body, and went and defeated Wall. The Red Lightning thing was a little weird. I think it would have been more sense to kind of like be, his full powers back and do something. I've always had weird thoughts on the Red Lightning, but he essentially was able to kind of like get back and fight at how strong he actually was, but then get stronger. So Urza was again still weaker than him,
And as we saw, she just was just barely weaker than him. So that was a big win for Urza, but even though she didn't win, it was a big kind of win for like her as a character in the story, but also power level wise. And it would be a big thing for Laxus, because Laxus right now doesn't have anything to say that he can compete with people like Suzaku. And I think it would be really cool to kind of like reverse role how it was in Drasil with Laxus here, where Laxus has this really sick fight, like put like 3 solid chapters, focused them. Like small stuff, like somewhere like in the beginning and like the center of the chapter, but way focused on Laxus, and then have some really cool ending for the fight where Laxus loses just barely, and then maybe Kirin, maybe his thing is he takes Kirin out of the fight for a bit, and then he gets well rested, and Mishima could do it in a way that say it's done like Suzaku or Urza and Laxus, where both of them are pretty much done, but there was a clear winner. And then at some point, Kirin gets back up. Because whatever his attribute is, he's able to regain stamina and magic way faster than Laxus. Whatever his is, he's able to locate, or maybe he brought a supply of whatever it is. So I've always wondered that, like, why, like, if I was Natsu, I'd definitely carry around a pouch of, like, Lockgermount that are pretty much just explosives, and then if, like, I'm low on energy, pop one and then eat it. I've always wondered why characters don't do that. Because, like, Wendy obviously doesn't need to, but if you're a character that, like, is, say, Laxus, I would just kind of carry him like Zenzu beans, pretty much. Just personal Zenzu beans. And you could use them for attacks and use them for just general usage, but, like, just stamina and magic regen. So, there's a lot Mishima could do with this. Like, I'm really hyped for this arc because it's already starting out in a really strong way. And there's so much, like, hype potential in these fights. Especially from the fact that one thing that is consistent throughout the entire series is Dragon Slayer versus Dragon Slayer, and really is Slayer and Slayer in general, but definitely more emphasized on Dragon Slayer versus Dragon Slayer. Fights are brutal. They're always aggressive. There's a lot of hand-to-hand combat. They're more vicious than other with kind of magic users in the series. They have their own perks, which obviously you have to kind of like figure out work around, but it always comes down to just pretty much a sprawl, kind of like just an aggressive clash. Kind of like how Acnologi and Igneo fought. We saw 2 dragons fight, or Atlas Flame and Mother Glare. When we see them actually kind of battle, it's like how 2 dragons would actually fight, but just given crazier more abilities and power levels and stuff. And that's how pretty much Dragon Slayers fight. So these fights are all going to, I would hope, be really cool. The one shown, I can't really hate, again, on Madville and Scoleon, because that's like if someone like Wendy or Gray came up to one of them 1v1 and didn't get some form of giant kind of like character boosting kind of situation where something that happened that would cause some form of win in their favor, regardless of circumstance, whatever the buildup is or whatever kind of goes around. Kind of like imagine if Gajil got Dragon Force and was able to beat one of them, versus where if he didn't. Obviously, if he didn't, he wasn't able to kind of gain some big important moment for him, then it would just be he gets defeated. Same thing with obviously Scullion and Madbull. They were not in a scenario where they were going to become more powerful and beat Laxus. They didn't have anything kind of going, I would assume. I would like to definitely see more of them, though. I like both characters. I've actually really liked all the Dragon Eaters, funny enough. I've pretty much enjoyed, I think, relatively all of the characters that Mishima has introduced for the most part in 100 Years Quest. Some of like the really small kind of side characters I can't really say I care too much for. I'm still a little iffy on Eleftheria. I still find him a little bit strange and suspicious, but I feel like he's almost good now. But like all the Dragon Eaters, the Moonlight, I guess now they're, what are they? The Moonlight Divinities in the official translations. I like the God Seeds. I've enjoyed all the Dragon Eaters. I think all the characters have just been really fun. There hasn't really been any that I've disliked other than a couple side characters and people that are just kind of there to be there. All the kind of active role characters have been fun. Like, I enjoyed Ferris. I enjoyed Toka. I'm trying to think of any new characters in between kind of areas like that. The Fairy Nail characters are probably the only thing that I was just kind of like... The only thing really... they're kind of like not anything that I really care too much about other than the stuff that happened with Gray. But outside of that, it was just like... That's probably the only part that I was just like... This was a chunk of chapters that didn't really give much. Like the ones that we got before this arc, where it was some of it was kind of more fun, kind of like transitionary stuff where the characters are kind of cooling down, they're getting rested and kind of like getting up to speed with things, and we see different plot points moving. But the ones we've had recently ended with a little bit of context as to like an important context as to what's coming and important kind of like events to watch. So you're still getting nuggets of important stuff in kind of the more calming portions of chapters. And I've really enjoyed that with these last couple chunks, because it's been that way since Edalus really. I think the Fairy Note one especially, since then it's really kind of gone more towards having like and ending way faster of like the smaller kind of like slice of life almost kind of bits, and giving us more of that kind of like moving driving event sort of thing. And also really quick, because we're like 1 hour, I just really appreciate if you would thumbs up the video, subscribe if you haven't, and you know, if you feel like donating any money, you don't have to, but anything, even $1 is really well appreciated. But yeah, I really would like to see what Mishima else has planned for 100 Years West, because it's been a lot wilder than I think initially like the premise would be, of just going after these dragons to go fight them. You know, obviously we haven't even really seen much of the White Wizard and Rebellious yet. That's still something that is a hanging plot point that I really want to figure out what Mishima has plans for. Like, is that something that's going to happen after this arc, or what's really going to kind of go down now that like the characters are all active in a remote spot? I don't really know. I definitely need to get back to the chat. I've been ranting too much. People want Mad Warriors Gajo. I wish. Well, the thing is, like, it would be really cool to see if it just came down to a brute force slugfest, so we can see a couple techniques, because Mad Bull has something. Like, he's got to have a Dragon Slaying perk, and we saw a part where he points to the water, and then it becomes hard, and he walks on it. I would really like to see what Mishima like has them from like an ability standpoint, but also like how it would look from just the slugfest, because Madmal is physically strong. We saw that when he punched Natsu and their fists collided. You could definitely have a fight where it's just like kind of like when Gildarts and Blue Note threw punches, and they were just creating giant shockwaves that were like tearing craters into the ground and stuff, just of brute force. Do that with Madmal and Gajil. I think that would be really cool. As well as, obviously, Gajil getting a durability kind of, like, upgrade would be really sick, because he is a character that is very durable in a class that is durable. Dragon Slayers are all durable, so Gajil and Madmal are both out of the area of, like, baseline, like, Dragon Slaying durability, and they get, like, Dragon Slaying durability deluxe. They have this higher end kind of variation. I see someone forcing Laxus to use Fairy Law. I don't think Laxus is going to use Fairy Law against Kirin. Kirin's not like after their guild. Like he is in this game pretty much in this setup, and Laxus doesn't have. I don't think Laxus has the personal stakes to use Fairy Law. The only way I can see it is if Kirin says he's gonna kill members of the guild with Laxus. But if that happens, like I'd be so worried as to if like what Mishima's plans with that, because that is a scenario where either Fairy Law could defeat Kirin, or it could be a setup for Kirin beating Laxus. That is a end of match usage ability, really. So it would really, like, what if Mishima has Laxus use Fairy Law, there has to be a lot of build up both to it and a lot of aftermath from it. Something very important. Because Fairy Law is like a spell that has always kind of had that kind of cinematic changing effect. The whole tone is going to change when Fairy Law goes off. My PC bills to come this week. Bad thing is delivered by FedEx. Well, I hope your PC comes in good shape. I haven't, no spoilers, Jaren. Oh, what is Jaren talking about? You watched My Hero World Heroes Mission? No, I haven't seen it. Fun fact, the Monster Hunter is called Diablos. Which one's Diablos in Monster Hunter? I'm trying to remember. DC, Gemini reverting, Lucy, Natsu completely out. I don't think so, because the thing about Gemini is Gemini works at a level of Lucy's magic, and equal to or below Lucy's magic, and Haku is definitely above Lucy's, so I don't really see it. If, like, they could definitely do something to kind of figure out a way around it that I could see. Like, say, Lucy uses Hologram. Hologram takes them to Celestial Spirit World. Because they're in a completely different dimension, the ability cancels, they immediately come back. But because how the Celestial Spirit World works, the amount of time in Earthlane would pass way faster. So maybe you could have a gap in the arc where Natsu and Lucy are not participating. And then they could kind of show up later in the game fresh and ready to fight. It's really going to depend on what Machine wants to do. I could see it just wearing off, or Natsu could figure out a way to burn the effect of the spell without destroying, the cotton that's in his setup. Like if he does it more with like internal heat or something, I could see that. I could see Natsu figuring out a way around it. Because when we saw Natsu fight with Zareth, he was burning the spells themselves. It wasn't just burning magic. He was burning the effect of the spell. Everything of it gone. Kind of like how Gildarts can break spells. He can break the magic. Jalal LARPing like Tundra, only Sema. What are you talking about? Is written as true heavenly body. Their spells are all fake. Well, no, that's just when he's actually affecting like a heavenly body. He's affecting a chunk of mass out in space. That's the difference. It's the difference between true magic and Fairy Tail versus Black Clover is Black Clover, your true magic, it becomes the natural element, whereas like true magic in Fairy Tail is like of a higher tier. Because you have to keep in mind when you have a magic, it's like its own class, and there are tiers to it. Like, look at early Lucy, where she's just summoning a spirit and, fighting like a Pokemon trainer with a melee weapon, to now, like, with Mimi, where she's summoning spirits to set up strategies and combinations while star dressing, switching, and then using spells that she's created for different forms. She's advanced to a much higher tier, and then we see someone like Anna, who's at the end of, like, a Celestial Spirit Wizard line, who can affect concepts, who's just extremely powerful. So there's a degree to it. Like, obviously, like, there's Senma, and then there's, like, Deuce Senma, which is just a higher tier of the spell that Jalal uses. There's a whole different kinds of setups to how, like, the magic system works. And I really wish Mishima did something kind of like a data book where it literally just goes into information on the magics. Because Fairy Tail's magic is very different, where it's way more like a tabletop RPG, where it's way more free range, and it's supposed to feel way more of like a world, like a mystical world with kind of like a D&D, kind of like open world kind of style to it, rather than a structured one, something like Black Clover's, whereas Black Clover's magic system is designed to be way more like a video game, where it's supposed to be structured by the dynamic and nature of how it's set up. So it really just kind of, you have to really kind of like look at it and see like the differences in different scenes. Like obviously the part where Jalal is using true heavenly body magic, he's actually pulling down a meteor, versus like obviously what true magic is in like Black Clover and how they work. Again, I really wish Machine would just give us like a data book on magics and tell us how like certain things work at a fundamental level like that, and maybe just give us a couple other instances of characters using true magic, like when Let me just pull up the panel real quick. When Invil says that his ice is, like, he talks about how his is true ice magic, where he's using the essence of the cold to freeze things entirely and not just make ice to attack people with. Let me see where the exact translation is. I think it's like chapter 498 or something around that. I'm just looking at it. I would like to look at it. Yeah, he says he's a pure ice wizard, and he says is a derivative of true ice magic. So he's pretty much using true ice magic. And in his case, he's able just to use the cold itself. With Jalal, he's able to actually affect stuff out in space. He's actually affecting a heavenly body. I would assume like another one would be like if he actually called down like a beam from the sun, or I'm trying to think more just general kind of like crazy stuff from the sky. If he called down like pretty much just starlight, something like Galaxia Blade, or like a meteor shower, or an asteroid, or a comet, or maybe he like did something with like a quasar. Obviously not as powerful as a quasar, but like with the fundamental ability just at his level. But he's like maybe like using some of it from at some point in space, because the idea of Dusem as well is you're calling something from the like pretty much in space, but she's calling it from much further distance, so it's faster. It's much faster. Yeah, I definitely want Macro to die of old age. Great has the potential. He could only fight Devil. He could only Demon Slayer that can fight and defeat Dragon Slayers. Well, it's more going to depend though on how his form progresses, because these are much stronger characters. Shigaraki did gain new order, but it's destroying. Yeah, I know that, but it's like now she just kind of died to nerf him. God Jill is the rival fighter. No, it's definitely Gray. Like when Mishima gave them like a freaking Avengers Civil War setup, like the way that they're faced off each other on the magazine, and clearly the way that their backstories are set up with their dads, and the fact that in later portions of the story both of them are about carrying on their dad's will. Like it's so easily set as them as the rivals to each other. Godzilla is like an additional rival. Godzilla is something that kind of like stacks on to be somebody on top of Natsu, to be somebody that's a adversary to him. Natsu has lots of non-enemy adversaries because of Natsu's nature, and that like Natsu fights. He's kind of like how Ichigo has Byakuya but also has Grimmjow. You can kind of look at it like that with Godzilla. Godzilla and Natsu get it more than he and Gray do nowadays, but that's just because they don't have like the same level of compatibility. Godzilla and Natsu are, in their sense, rivals at dragon slaying, and Natsu and Gray are rivals in general. They've known each other longer. They've had a history. They literally like used to fight each other all the time as kids. Like it's and I know Godzilla has moments like that before the whole Eclipse plane happened and the Dragon Slayer plane happened. Well, yeah, Dragon Slayer plane Eclipse happened obviously later, but it's obviously way more emphasized on Gray, not just from a standpoint of where he is adjacent in the story, because obviously Gray is the one in the main cast, but also from the standpoint of how Mishima wrote their backstories and how they acted based off of those at points in the story. Because like look at like Gray and Natsu in Avatar. Natsu when was talking about like his father's flames and the fire dragon kings, this is his power, and Gray was doing jobs from his father, doing essentially the same thing that Silver was doing. It's definitely made to be more like a rivalry setup between Natsu and Gray. Natsu and Atlas Flames, he's a 5th gen Slayer. I think he's just an exception. I don't think so. If Mishima did that, he would definitely have to get rid of his motion sickness. But obviously that can't happen. I think Atlas Flame is just a different kind of, variation. Maybe because with him, I would assume for a Dragoneer to kind of like get the effect off, he would have to like eat him entirely. You have to eat his soul. But whereas like Atlas Flame is pretty much just fire, you would have to make up whatever makes him a sentient flame, pretty much. What's up, Pit Fiend? How you doing? Someone asked Raz a specific question, leading him to a 20-minute video, pretty much. What do you think of Team F? Team F is dead. Rax being Rax. I mean, that's what I do. I go on unintentional long rants. I haven't had a good one in a while. 3 more Galactica, Dead and Crow, Saint Fire Nox, and God Aknoella. I am probably most interested, I'd say, in story potential-wise Aknoella, but in I really want to see the bishop guy, the Saint Nox. Like, he seems cool. He seems like he'll have a really interesting arc, where if they have to deal with some like religious order, something really cool. Future Wizard King Seki being worse. What is Seki gonna do in this arc? I really hope he does something. Haku's OP. Like, Haku, I really wish we got to know what his Dragon Slaying attribute was in this. It makes me really sad that we still don't know what his attribute is. Because that's the thing I really want to know the most, I think, out of them. Is, like, I want to know what they can do. I want to know what their Dragon Slaying attributes are. Because we already know, it's not like a case where you have these unknown characters. They are Dragon Slayers. It's not like Mimi, Hakune, and Yoko, like, if you just dropped them on panel, it's like, oh, what are their abilities? We know these guys are Dragon Slayers. We just don't know their attribute. So we already know a chunk about them. We just don't know to what extent. And the thing about the Dragon Eaters is they've all found really weird attributes. So we don't know exactly what it could be. It's not a standard element. So it could just be anything. We just know their kind of like nicknames with their dragon colors. Suzaku cut Celine, Natsu vaporized Alderaan. Well, no, Natsu beat Suzaku. Suzaku and them weren't using Dragon Force, but 5th Gen Dragon Force, you kind of have to look at differently than other Gen Dragon Force. They can use Dragon Force as like a temporary power-up, whereas 5th Gen Dragon Force is like a last resort. It's like with Gray, how Gray has lost aspect. This is a I have to end this opponent even if it costs me my life kind of thing. Not like a I'll die in battle, but more of like this guy has to go. I can't let this guy go beyond me kind of scenario. I would assume. Because like I don't see like someone like Celine being able to bail one of them out of getting turned into a mindless dragon every time. Haku can eat dolls. I don't think that he's a doll dragon slayer. I think that's just a perk of what he can do. I don't really know. Or he can have his own separate magic. Unless Mishima wants to make him like a dream dragon slayer. And that's kind of the thing about like a cat in the fluffy kind of like coat. Maybe it's like how a cat naps and that's what he's going to go with. And then the idea obviously white tiger, but also kind of like a cloud kind of going with dreams. I don't really know. This is just a weird thing. I don't really know what he's going to do with this character. I think that would be hilarious. I think it'd be hilarious because it'd be such a specific counter. It's not like elemental or even blades, like with eating swords or something. If it was like dream, then it'd be like, well, someone like Dorothy. It's just like a specific character exists out there that do not come close to him or he's going to eat your dream and then attack you. Or something weird like that. Because I assume that the dragon eaters in the in the Black Dragon Slayer Knights all have to have OP abilities. There was a little nod at whatever Misaki can do, and she's like levitating up that minion inside of the labyrinth. I'm hoping it's not gravity because I don't really know how I'd feel about a gravity dragon slayer. It'd be somebody like Natsu's already overcome a gravity opponent. If Mishima really wants to go crazy with it, I'm fine with it, but it's going to depend on what his plans are in like using it. Because we've already seen a black hole from a gravity wizard in Fairy Tail be defeated. And if the anime in Alvarez is kind of the overwritten canon from pretty much Mishima taking direct hand in it. And anything he altered obviously had to be by his own direction. So he burnt the black hole. So I don't really know what Misaki could do that Natsu wouldn't be able to overcome. Obviously it doesn't mean that she has to fight Natsu. But I kind of want to see something different. I'd be perfectly fine though it is a gravity dragon slayer, or because otherwise, what is it, telekinesis? I don't really know. Mishima could do something weird like magnetism, or I don't really know because like levitation or telekinesis would be really weird. Like I don't really know how that would work, unless it's like a spatial dragon slayer and he's gonna kind of like take Minerva up times 10. Because obviously she's got the crown, so what would she just be like, some form of spatial princess kind of thing going on? I don't really know. Like, they've all been really vague. And that's one of the things about the Dragon Eaters, is all their powers are like, their dragon attributes are really weird. Because the difference is, it's not like they have a magic and it's like, oh, well, this is a hint at their magic. They are a dragon slayer at the end of the day. So they have to be a something dragon, and their magic and abilities have to tie to it. So when you get these weird, vague things like freaking turning people into dolls, I guess stuffed animals, rather. Plushies, actually, I guess, technically, if you want to one form of the wording. Pretty much turning people into plushies. And what does that tell us? That tells us absolutely nothing. Misaki, all we got was a levitation of one of these, like, fodder so Kirin can cut it. And she has weird eyes, so maybe her eyes have to do with it. I don't really know. It's definitely an odd point for Mishima. I would actually like a Gravity Dragon Slayer if he wants to do something crazy. Like, obviously Mishima's had a lot of time to think of fun stuff to do with, like, gravity through... I mean, he had Doryu and Rave Master. He had Blue Note in Fairy Tail. He had some other gravity users, but obviously Blue Note was, like, his big kind of gravity manipulating character. Because, like, Kagura and Libra were, like, they could do it, but, like, it was never really too much of a crazy spectacle. He never kind of flexed ideas with them, like, when he was, like, doing just these big kind of like cinematic AoE gravity shockwaves and pulses and stuff with Blue Note, or, you know, crazy agility and maneuverability with like Shiki and stuff. He could do something really fun with Misaki. He ended up pretty much doing the same, kind of like coming up with the same kind of like wild style of gravity, but for a Dragon Slayer, and then, you know, tacking more abilities onto her. Plus, it'd be really cool to see a Dragon Slayer have, like, you know, what do you do for, like, gravity clad in a Dragon Slayer? Would he draw, like, an energy kind of like Shiki? Or would it pretty much be, like, kind of like when you look at like a effect of kind of gravity where it's like, you know, whatever the drawing effect of being pressed by gravity. Imagine that around her hand, and it's like if you just get struck by her, gravity is just increased by her touch, kind of thing. I think that would be really cool. Like there's definitely, you know, potential in there, but it's like one of those ones where it's like it's an element Mishima is already given, you know, on a flex character, so it would have to be a really big flex, kind of like what Suzaku was. And again, she's in line with someone like Suzaku. What Suzaku was to other dangerous sword enemies, because when you look at the other ones and you really see the payoff of what we got with Suzaku, Suzaku was definitely leagues above any other sword character we've ever had. Not just in terms of sheer power level, but in his demonstration. The fact he was able to defeat human form Selene was beyond, I think, relatively anyone's real expectations. So that could happen for Misaki, but we'll see. It's going to depend. It's going to depend entirely of Mishima's planning and what he wants to do with them. I'm just hoping that all the Black Dragon Slayer Knights get focus and get well treatment. That's one of the things I really want to happen to them, because when Mishima gives larger numbers, obviously not all of them are going to be super important. I think once he gets to that, once he gets beyond 7 is where they start kind of dropping off. In terms of like just kind of like some of their attention. If you look at like the 9 demon gates, like he's had like a smaller death. Tempesta got no diff in his second fight, and the other ones actually got pretty well treatment, but definitely like those two kind of got the lowest. But then like you think of like the 7 Kid of Purgatory all got something kind of unique to them. The Arasion Seis all got something. The Arasion Seis in all the stories get something kind of really nice to each of them. Except for Jaguar, except he got some for Spec story. But like when Shima focuses on the smaller groups, he always gives them, I think, a little bit more kind of like just general longevity. And so like someone like the Moonlight Beauty Gods got like a longer, I think, than expected. So we could get something like that for these guys, but these guys are obviously a bigger deal, so it could play out in a much grander scheme. And I'm kind of hoping Mishima doesn't kill off any of the Dragon Eaters in this fight, in this kind of part of the arc. Like, if he kills them off, like, maybe he kills Kirin or Misaki or some of them off at some point later on the story, because, like, maybe something kind of crazy happens and it's like a giant Dragon Eater, or a Dragon Slayers versus Dragons battle or something, or, you know, something wild. If he kills off some characters, that'd be one thing, but I don't want any of them to happen now. I definitely want these guys to stick around for a bit, because I think they're all pretty interesting, and I want to see what all of them can do. Because, again, I've enjoyed all of the Dragon Eaters. They've definitely been my favorite and most consistent characters in 100 Years Quest. Because I've liked the Dragon Gods, too, but, like, the Elmina characters, besides Mersobia, were kind of, like, neat, but I didn't really care too much about them. I thought the God Teats were neat. I liked them a little bit more. And then the Moonlight Beauty Gods, I enjoyed about the same for the most part as the God Teats. I like Mimi, though, a little bit more, just because she was entertaining and funny. But with the Black Dragon Slayer Knights, they should all, I think, just kind of have that high value kind of character stock. They're all really well designed. They all seem really interesting. They're all clearly very powerful, you know, to be on level with Suzaku. So I think there's just a good, like, well of potential and value kind of around each of them. And I'm really hoping Mishima does each of them justice. Because, like, whenever he does, like, groups like that, I'm hoping just to enjoy the characters. But these guys obviously have a lot more kind of backing that makes it so they need to be more valuable. Yeah, people are talking about, like, Yami going down and stuff. But it's like, yeah, it's looking like that. Is it Fairy Tail anti-authoritarian? Like, they have their own rules. They want you to live free and be happy, but obviously there's some stuff that you have to kind of abide by. They're pretty much, like, live as free as you can. Obviously, like, they're not going to be for, like, murder and stuff, but you know what I mean? They're more for a kind of a more enjoyable kind of, like, aspect of life. Can Eraser kill Acnologia or Zeref? I don't think so. Here's the thing. Zeref's, when Fairyheart Zeref was hit by Natsu's Savage Dragonfire, it erased his connection to... It erased time itself, or it destroyed time itself, and it destroyed Fairyheart. It burnt infinite energy in the concept of time. This is a broken attack, and Zeref's curse lived through it. So we know that his curse will keep him alive pretty much through anything, because his curse is from a god, which clearly is above destroying concepts. And Acnologia got sucked into a true void where nothing could exist by the concept of time. It's pretty much a hole in reality in the universe, and it didn't destroy him. I don't think Eraser would work on him. I really don't. Just based off like the things they've both overcome, I really don't see them getting really affected by it. Do I miss TMF? Not really. What's worse, Jesse being a pussy and for killing Creed or throwing a Morios? I think for killing Creed in general, because obviously that led to a dude dying. Acnologia is basically a combination of Acnologia and Irene, naming wise. I'm kind of hoping so. I think that's kind of neat. I want to know what he does, because obviously, like, Irene isn't the mother of dragons, she's the mother of dragon slayers. Natsu used Flames of Wild Emotions first time against Aragorn. Yes. Well, no, it's not Wild Emotion. So his was just Flames of Emotion. The ones that used on Zeref was just like a more powerful version. Silver Bloodman and the Grey, I'll use Devil Ice at once. Would it make Indy bleed? Not full power. Don't be hating on Grey. Pretty cool. Twitter's gonna field day with Jesse. Yeah, Jesse's ass. Sephiroth defeated Zack Fair. I don't really know much about Final Fantasy other than they're powerful. Does the point of view of the story make sense for them to die? It depends. So, does Sephiroth have time stop? Because the thing about Fairy Tales, when you get to like super broken people like Zeref, if you can get over like power level wise like Acnologia, and you can get over hacks and broken Zeref, you're pretty much good. Chapter really makes me wish for a Grey power up. Yeah, I agree. I want that too. Another strong female character died in my hero. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It makes me really sad. Laxus gonna beat Kirin. I don't think so. I really don't. Like, it'd be really weird to like take Kirin down this early, and we already know Laxus' strength. I definitely see Laxus losing, because this is the first display of the new Black Dragon Slayer Knight, so I feel like it's gonna be in Kirin's favor. Morris said 300 chapter Stars and Stripes and only 5, yet she's more goated. Oh, one Morris we haven't seen the end of Morris yet. But Stars and Stripes just had like a cool power level flex up, but it's like I don't really care that she died. And that's why I'm more sad that she was a character that had a lot of potential that was not really used. Laxus low diff Grey now. I don't think he can low diff Grey, because Grey didn't lose to Skullion in a straight fight. He lost to Skullion because he got caught in hacks. Like how Urza lost to Kyria because she got caught in hacks. Which is something that can obviously happen when somebody has a broken ability. If they fought without it, I think it would really depend on like how hard Grey would have to actually be pushed to fight Skullion. But I definitely thought Laxus was stronger than Grey already. Do you think Haku's hacks will be countered? I would hope so. I'll talk about like Grey need to get stronger. Xenon Stomps Kimimaro. I mean, yeah, for sure. Do I miss TMF? No. Who has bigger dicks, the Magic Council or the Clover Nobles? I mean, the Magic Council was ready to potentially wage war on another kingdom, just to take down Zeref without kind of like communicating them with all. Like they were ready to potentially just completely like have problems with the country, another country, and they were ready to annihilate magic across their whole continent if it meant keeping Alvarez at bay. My white? No. Kill Thunder, Collapse Laxus, that's not true. Do I think Ignia show up? The thing is, like, Ignia could easily show up at any point. Ignia could very easily show up. I don't think so, though. I want this to be more focused on the dragon eaters more than I wanted Celine. I want Celine to have a very kind of like stable position where she's shown a lot being commenting on stuff, similar to how it was when they had everyone in, doing the whole first initial kind of like in the mountain doing that whole portion of the story. And what was Oni Gatsumi? I'm trying to remember the name of the mountain, but that whole thing, like, the one that that led to like the girls being implemented with yokai and stuff. How much faster is Happy and more resistant than the entire Straw Clue due to his late speed and he got nuked by Jackal? I mean, he's definitely more durable than some of them, but obviously he's not more durable than like Luffy and stuff. You can kind of look at like Natsu's Fire Dragon King mode and like Happy's heat resistance feats. That's one thing, but I don't think Happy could tank like the brute force attacks like someone like Luffy could.
They couldn't be like speed. Kirin is explicitly stated to be lightning speed, and that was hyped up by Zetsu as unavoidable. Laxus would just eat Kirin, but that's unavoidable by Zetsu at people their level, to his knowledge. I wonder if I would say, like, what if Kirin is a light dragon slayer, but like Mishima would have to do something really cool and special for that. I don't think so, because like one of the things about it is like they haven't been elemental, so I think he's gonna be something really weird. I'm hoping so bad it's radiation, like that's my big dragon slaying, fingers crossed. A necromancer would be really cool, but it'd be really weird to have a spirit corpse and like some form of necromancer dragon all in the same guild, unless it's kind of designed to be that like you have upgraded versions of different dragon slayers. Like maybe that's what he was going for. Maybe he found Kiria and then found Suzaku, or he found Suzaku and then he's like, hey, you know what, we'll get you somebody to kind of like spar with or something. What if Ray Nail got brutally murdered? I don't really know. That wouldn't really bother me. That, I mean, it'd be like, wow, I can't believe he did that. That sucks. But it'd be like, then these were side characters that were more done for like jokes. Lax versus Jalal. I got Jalal. Let's see. I don't want to talk about power like calc stuff in the chat. I don't really like calcs. I think they're silly. I like pixel scaling and looking for size and stuff, but I think calculations are kind of goofy. How does that Natsu stack up against the poor man's Rose? Like the nuke from Hunter x Hunter? I wouldn't hurt him. That's like city level. Difference between the magic freight soul and Black Clover is freight. So okay, you're just talking about, that's a different magic source. I was talking about the different, the way that it works differently in a fundamental level. Angstrom is the only true god. No, Angstrom is a god, but Kronos is definitely a god. Kronos is definitely a god in the series. But anyway, I'm going to, yeah, Quan would definitely say guilt. You know what, Wise Bear, you at Quan and ask him that question. I actually want to see that. If you can do that and Quan responds and says that, I will go in and attack Quan myself. Yeah, anyway, but other than that, favorite attack in Fairy Tail? I really like Natsu's Purgatory slashing Dragonfire. Like, it's just it's just so cool. It's just this massive, mega super hit. It just was badass to see. I always like it when characters have one mega powerful attack. That's one of the things I liked about, like Luffy had, King Konga, Goku had, like, Dragon Fist, Naruto. Well, I mean, I guess Naruto has variations of Rasengan. But I always thought that was cool. Like, each goes the final. I mean, it's a different kind of technique, but the final gets Getensho. Just some form of mega like finisher to a move that they can whip out. It pretty much is their end all be all super technique. But anyway, other than that, though, I'm gonna end the stream. I hope you guys have a good night and a good rest of your week. I'm just gonna wait for the chapter, and then we'll do chapter translation review, and we'll talk about how this is going. I'm definitely hyped for how